Pleasant good evening, pleasant good evening. It is Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. This is Attorney Marlon Hill, and I am so honored to be here with you live on Jamaicans.com on behalf of Editor-in-Chief Kadia Francis and founder Xavier Murphy and the rest of the Jamaicans.com team. I am so happy that you are here with us here this Thanksgiving week for this very important conversation with President Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, has been reelected since November the 24th, and he will be the 47th president of the United States come January 2025 in the next couple weeks. And the transition is just in motion. We're going to be talking this evening. If you have not just joining us, we are simulcasting live here on Jamaicans.com. On LinkedIn, we are simulcasting on Facebook, and we're also simulcasting on YouTube as well. So we're asking you to share this with the rest of the family. Grab some Tuesday night dinner, some pre-Thanksgiving meals, and a drink or some tea, and we're going to have a conversation about the impact of the incoming presidency of President Donald J. Trump especially about immigration. We're not going to talk about many other issues, but this is probably going to be a recurring conversation. But we certainly want to talk about what is on your mind with regard to the impact of immigration. To join me in this conversation this evening is my good friend. She is the pride of St. Hilda's and St. Anne, and an alumnus of FIU Law School. We are rivals. I am an alumnus of Florida State Law School. I want to join Attorney Tremaine Hemans joining us here on Jamaicans.com. My good ups friend.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is such an important issue. So kudos to Jamaicans.com for coordinating this, because this conversation definitely needs to be had so we can get ahead of, the changes that are about to come.
Tremaine, before we get into the weeds, and I know many people have lots of questions, maybe even some people are feeling a lot of trepidation, maybe some fear, some unknown questions with regards to their families. But before we jump into all of those legal questions, first I must say that tonight's conversation is here on Jamaicans.com, Tremaine, is only for informational purposes. This is not legal advice. We're going to encourage you to seek licensed legal consultations, right, with an attorney or with an organization with licensed attorneys practicing immigration law, which is a federal law, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the weeds of the issue on the topic this evening here on Jamaicans.com, Tremaine, let's just talk a little bit about our own immigration story. Tell us a little bit about your immigration story, how you came here to the United States, any challenges that you had with yourself personally or your family, and why your experience may be relevant for the conversation tonight.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that. I love sharing my story because I think that that's really what sets me apart as an immigration attorney, is that I have my own story and my own experience with first coming here as an international student in 2007. My mom was working as a home health care aide and, paid for me to go through school at Broward College. And then I was able to matriculate to Nova Southeastern University. At that point, I was married to a lovely US citizen, right? So I did get my status through marriage. But before that, I was undocumented for a year and a half. Okay, so I feel like a lot of us have our own immigrant stories where that is concerned. And then I went through the citizenship process as well. So I feel like that personal experience really informed my passion for wanting to help more people, because I remember being an international student and at 19 being faced with having to figure out my own immigration status, you know what I mean? And our parents do the best that they can, but I was in that situation, so I had to figure out what to do. I was one of the lucky ones where I was already dating my then husband, so it worked out for me, but not everyone is that fortunate. Some of us are able to come with green cards,
right?
And so I realized how unfair the system is to international students, first of all, and how the system can really be abusive to certain immigrants, because I did do my paperwork for my marriage by myself. I did a consultation with an attorney. I went with my notepad, asked all the questions to make sure I was doing it right.
This is before law school?
What was that?
This is before law school?
This is way before law school, yes. And so I ended up getting 2 requests for evidence. I was crying. It was stressful, all kind of madness. And so please use a lawyer, because mine was not fun, right? So there was a lot of stress involved, a lot of anxiety. And so I realized that I really wanted to hone in on that passion, and not only because I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I was like, I think this is what I want to do with my career.
Right. So you came up. So
standing
you came
up for
up
a bully really makes me feel nice at night.
So you came up for school, or you came up with family?
I came up for school. So yeah. I was studying pre-law at Broward College initially.
Right. Yeah. So my experience is a little bit different. I came up with, my mom is the oldest of 3 sisters, and she was the last one to come here. My first aunt was the first one. She came here as a teenager in the 1960s, and then she ended up applying for her second sister and my mom, the third sister. As you know, applying for siblings takes 8 to 10 years. So I came up as a young teenager, and then I came up as a permanent resident, and then I went off to school at Florida State, and then I later got naturalized, and now as a U.S. citizen. So we know, Tremaine, that there are well over 11 million undocumented persons in the United States, and we know that about 3% of that are of Caribbean descent. So we don't know the exact number of how many of our extended family members of Jamaican descent are undocumented. But you and I know that the chances of somebody watching this program right now and knowing someone who is undocumented, is that a low percentage or a high percentage?
Very high, very, very high, especially if you're part of the Caribbean community. It's difficult not, you can throw a stone and hit somebody who is undocumented, especially where we live. You know, we live in South Florida and we have a very high immigrant population here. So this directly affects a lot of us.
Yeah. So I am a Kingstonian. You know, I grew up in Kingston. My grandmother was my first grade teacher at New Providence Primary School. My father is from Spanish Town, and my mother's side of the family is from Hanover and St. James. I'm St. Catherine, Hanover, and St. James.
Okay.
That's the roots of my family. But I was born on Hope Road at St. Andrew's Memorial Hospital, and then I went to primary school at New Providence up there in Ligonier, right across from the U.S. Embassy, by the way, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then I went to St. George's College. What about you?
So we have town and country here, I see. I am from the Garden Parish, the beautiful St. Anne. I hail from the hills of St. Anne from Moneague, right? And most of my family honestly still lives in that region. From both sides of my family are from St. Anne. So I'm a Garden Parish girl. I will always go back to country where the air is clean, right? I started at Moneague Basic School, Moneague SDA Basic School. And then I went to Moneague Primary and Junior High, where I ended up being a monitor, right? And then I went on to the St. Hilda's Diocesan High School for Girls in Brownstown, St. Anne. Rest where I'm Gaudium to all my fellow St. Hilda's girls in this chat today. And then I migrated to the U.S.
All right, so Hilda's girls, big up yourselves. STGC, big up yourself as well. So like I said, the 3% are undocumented. From the Caribbean descent. And undocumented, how do people become undocumented, Tremaine? How does that happen?
Right. So great question. I think there's a little discord where this is concerned. Being undocumented happens many different ways, regardless of how you entered the country, right? So even if you entered with a visa that allows you to stay for a certain period of time, if you overstay that visa, you are now an undocumented immigrant. You know what I mean? But the most popular thing that we all hear are those who come to the country through the border, right? And there is no paperwork to track them in the country. So that's what everybody's used to hearing. But you become undocumented several different ways.
Yeah, and many people think that all immigrants are Latino, and that's not necessarily the case, right?
Right. So I feel like we're going to have to do a lot of work as immigration attorneys to, dispel a lot of the propaganda surrounding this. There are immigrants coming here from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is Hispanic or Latino. So, immigrants come from all over the world.
As past president of the Caribbean Bar Association, over the years, Tremaine, we have come in contact with a number of people at our citizenship drives, with family members who are undocumented. Either they came for school, overstayed their visa.
Exactly.
They came to work as an agricultural laborer or as a healthcare worker, and they overstayed. They came here for being a part of a religious organization, and they overstayed. They came here to visit Uncle Rupert and decided that come and visit him for Thanksgiving, but ended up staying beyond Thanksgiving and beyond Christmas. And then Christmas turns into summer, and summer turns into another Thanksgiving, and then they decide to stay.
Yeah.
Right. So we have thousands of those persons who are listening tonight who may be undocumented. So President-elect Trump has said publicly, and sometimes you have to really pay attention to not only what people say, but what they do in terms of elected officials, that he's going to, on day one, mass deportation. When someone says mass deportations, Tremaine as an immigration lawyer, what's the first thing that comes to your mind in a bold statement like that?
The first thing that comes to mind is clearly he's trying to bankrupt this country, because mass deportation, how much funds are we going to, allocate to get this done? Like, it sounds great, and I'm sure he's speaking to his base when he says that, but logistically speaking, because this is really why I was so excited to come on this program this evening. There's so much fear mongering happening, and he's going to say a lot of broad things, because he said a lot of broad things last time. Is it possible? Yes, but not on the scale that he's saying it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I know something that people don't realize as well during this transition. One of the things that we want you, the viewers, to kind of pay attention to, irrespective of how you voted in this election, any transition in government, whether the federal level, the state level, the county level or on a city level, you must pay attention to who the incoming leadership is.
Exactly.
Right? Just remember that immigration law is a federal issue, right? That is exclusive jurisdiction to the federal courts. Do you want to explain that a little bit, Tremaine, the difference between the federal courts and immigration law and state law as it relates to immigration and understanding the context?
Of course.
Because we want you to walk away this evening a little bit more informed, a little bit more prepared, and most importantly, a little bit more fearless with regards to your situation. So break that down for me if you could, Tremaine.
Right. So for those who do not know, as Marlon was saying, immigration law falls under the federal law, right? So it's not controlled by the state, it is controlled by the federal government. And in more particular, it's controlled by the executive branch largely. So who is president is very important because they directly affect immigrants through executive orders and through different policies, through their appointments of the judges. So it directly affects us in that way. There's also immigration laws that are enshrined in our actual laws, so into federal law. So not only does the president have power, Congress also has power to shape immigration law, right? Yeah. And so in order for President Trump to change a lot of the policies he was saying, he's going to have to get past something I like to call the Immigration Nationality Act, which is the law that governs immigration law. It's in Title 8 of the United States Code. And for him to overturn certain laws and implement different laws, it requires a lot to have a law passed through Congress. You know what I mean? So he doesn't have complete control over the entire system, but he largely has control over it.
So let's take a step back a little bit. For those of you who are, watching us or listening to us from Jamaica, population of 2.8 million, we have a parliamentary democracy where the prime minister becomes prime minister by virtue of being voted the person that wins the highest number of parliamentary seats, right? And then you have a governor general. In the United States, we have a president that's elected by the popular vote and the electoral college, right? So ultimately, everyone, I'm sure you're paying attention, right, to the cable news and your WhatsApp network with regards to this presidential election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. They had different approaches or different policy positions as it related to immigration. And one of those issues had to do with border security. And the border that we're really speaking of, Tremaine, truth be told, is the southern border of Mexico, right? And the northern border. And one of his positions was on day one, he would like to use the executive pen to mass deport, meaning return undocumented persons back to their country of origin. And you remember we said at the top of the program, there are over 11 million persons who are undocumented, whether they came last week or they've been here for 10, 15 years. So that is really the policy, one of the main policies that we want to talk about. The President-elect Trump has talked about limiting immigration, maybe even banning certain persons from entering the United States. He's talked about removing undocumented persons as a policy, mass deportation, meaning you're being removed back to your home country. And the third policy is border security. And that's the reason why you'll see the different appointments. So just remember, want to break down, Tremaine, the three branches of government. President Trump is in charge of the executive.
Right.
Congress is the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Republican Party, for which the president is the leader of, they won the House 219 to 200 and I think the number, let me check the number here. If all the votes are being counted, let me just be sure that I have the number here correct, Tremaine.
It's a narrow margin though.
It's a very narrow margin
in
the House, right? And then the Senate, also a narrow margin. And in order for an immigration law to be passed, it has to be proposed as an idea in Congress, and then the president has to sign that bill, and then the Congress also has to approve the budget, which is what you were referring to, that this mass will be very expensive.
Exactly.
Right. So the immigration national.
And then we have then don't forget the other branch now.
I'm about to just jump into that. So the branch that we are licensed to, the judicial branch, They interpret the laws, whether the case is filed in state court, federal court, and then it makes its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And those judges are appointed by who, Tremaine?
Exactly, the president. So that's what I was saying. I'm not going to lie. That's what gave me pause when I saw the results of this election, because he has control of everything. You know what I mean? So that's something to also consider. But I also, what I did to remind myself that calmed me down a little bit, even if the House and the Senate is red, there are still people who are political moderates who may not agree with a certain policy. So that does not mean all hope is lost.
Right. Well, one of the things that is very important in terms of the impact, right now we're approaching Thanksgiving. You probably will be talking about this around the Thanksgiving table, enjoying your curry goat with your turkey, right? The president, Tremaine, has nominated a number of persons for his executive cabinet.
Yes.
Right. And some of these persons are going to be overseeing immigration through the Department of Homeland Security. Please explain how the Department of Homeland Security is structured and the agencies that are involved in the immigration process.
Right. So the person you should care about most is whoever is in charge of Homeland Security. The Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be the most important person that you have to think about. And also
that is
the attorney.
South Dakota Governor.
Yeah.
You know him?
Miss Noem is one of the strong conservatives, to put it kindly, but she deployed her National Guard to the southern border, so we can expect very hardline policies when it comes to border policy from her. Also, the Attorney General impacts immigration law a lot, and that is our Florida, the former Florida Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Right. So she, based on what she has said so far, I expect her to be a Trump loyalist. So whatever he says will go. You know, I remember when he was president last time, and whoever was his pick, they pretty much went with whatever he said and tried to interpret the law to go with whatever he said, really. So those are the two most important people. And then he keeps touting this term border czar. Right. So he's appointing someone to specifically oversee border protection, right? To kind of police it. And for him right now, that's Tom Homan, who is the former director of ICE. And you can thank him for the separating families policy last time. So
what's ICE, Tremaine?
Sorry, that's Immigration's Customs Enforcement, right? So when people are talking about ICE coming to knock on your door, or when you are entering the country, those are the people that you encounter, right? So that's who he is. So basically, the entire cabinet that surrounds the immigration law, we're expecting to see pretty severe actions when it comes to border security in particular. And then I think there are a few other groups that are going to be affected. So I want people to also think outside of the realms of the border, because I think that's also why our voting numbers went the way they did, is people only expect the only type of immigration to be affected is going to be border entries, but it's going to affect us across the board.
Right. Let's recap. Let's recap a little bit, because some people, I would really suspect that many of our viewers and many of our subscribers to Jamaicans.com don't pay very close attention to the weeds of who's leading these agencies.
Right.
To the purpose of this conversation tonight, the fact that it's really fresh in our minds, is to reset your understanding of being very informed as to who are the persons that are going to be setting policy, passing laws, and passing a budget that impacts your life related to immigration. You got to remember, my friends, that immigration law was created when it first was constituted as a part of the governance of the United States to bring families together. And over the years, it has changed because of what's happening in the country historically. You remember the time there was internment of Japanese citizens. There are many times in our history where immigration policies reflect what's going on in the country. So we want you to understand that the Department of Homeland Security is one executive office, the most important executive office that's responsible for immigration enforcement of the laws. Remember, Congress makes the laws, the executive implements, enforces the laws, and the courts interpret the laws if someone is not enforcing or interpreting them in the right way.
Right.
So you have ICE, and then so Tom Homan, the border czar with the Department of Homeland Security, is going to be a very important person, not to watch what he says, to watch what he does.
What he does, exactly.
Another person, Tremaine, that I think we should pay attention to is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
Another person who was very, very involved in immigration policy in the first President Trump term. What are your thoughts on that?
The thing is, when it comes to Trump's cabinet, it's musical chairs because he tends to pick unqualified people. There's always issues when it comes to confirmation and what have you. So that's my take on that, to be quite honest.
Listen, the bottom line is that elections have consequences, okay, Tremaine? So these persons, those who have to go up for cabinet approval, have to go through the U.S. Senate. One of the things that we're encouraging the viewers to pay attention to are these confirmation hearings.
Yes.
Right? Because even though the Republican leadership in the Senate and in the House, when they convene their hearings, especially in the Senate, the opposition party, Democrats, they will have an opportunity to ask questions of these nominees. And pay attention, you will get a better sense of the impact of a President Trump's second term based on some of the answers that some of these cabinet nominees may offer, because the policies become parts of executive orders,
right?
Or the policies become laws that are proposed to change the immigration law. Do you anticipate, Tremaine, that there are going to be piecemeal changes to the Immigration Nationality Act, or there's going to be a wholesale? What are you hearing?
It's piecemeal, right? Because the reason I love being a lawyer is no matter how bleak certain things are, I do expect what we call an active bench. In Miami, we had a very active bench in his last administration. So things have to come through judges anyway for interpretation. So whatever they are able to change, they're still going to be contested in certain courts, right? Just like they have been contesting all the wonderful policies that the current administration tried to implement. I do expect that Democratic judges are going to be more active in and aggressive in their decision making.
Right. Some of the other cabinet nominees that I would love the viewers to pay very close attention to: Department of State, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, International Affairs, dealing with discussing the other relationships with other countries. Right. I think that's going to be very important. Who may be the U.S. ambassador designated to Jamaica, may be also important in regards to the immigration process. Ambassador Nick Perry, I suppose, Tremaine, won't remain. I think he will probably demit office as the transition takes place. You noted Attorney General Pam Bondi. Someone else that we will talk about in a little bit from the employer standpoint is Oregon Representative Lori Chavez de Romero. She's going to be the Secretary of Labor, right? Because some of us, we can't live in the United States without working, right?
Right.
And you need work authorization to work.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a little bit about the process of deportation.
Yes.
No, Tremaine, how are you going to deport 11 million people conceivably? What are you hearing from the American immigration lawyers or from that ecosystem as to how you think? Because this is all speculative, right? Until we know exactly what the executive order from the Oval Office looks like, or what laws are being proposed in Congress. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? But you have to believe the president.
And not only that, I feel we have an informed opinion on it because he was here before, and that's when I started working as an immigration attorney. So during his last administration, so I think we really do have a good consensus of what he's going to try to do and how annoyed he will be again when he realized that you can't just round everybody up and put them on planes.
Who are some of the people, Tremaine, you think would be prioritized in their first few weeks or months in terms of the executive?
Right. I think definitely people who have criminal records, historically, that's always been priority for every new administration, but particularly a Trump administration and a conservative presidents usually gun for those people first. Just speaking based off experience with his last administration, there was a last in, first out policy and family unit priority policy. So if you came through the border within the last year or two, you're going to be prioritized to go before an immigration judge. And family unit cases, so people who came in the country with, let's say, their husband and their children, those cases are going to be prioritized to go before a judge, right? That doesn't mean that they're going to round you up and throw you out immediately. Also, there are certain people who are on mandatory reporting schedules, right? So you're going to be required to report to to ICE, sorry, and you're going to have to explain what benefit you have available to you. And if there is no benefit available to you, then you're going to be placed before the judge again and likely get ordered deported.
So, Tremaine, let me just get straight to the question. I know that everybody on Jamaicans.com, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, I say, Marlon, just get to the point now. If I'm undocumented, Marlon and Tremaine, what should I be doing right now?
Right.
What's my first step? Am I talking with the family over Thanksgiving?
No.
That
with Caribbean people, I need you to stop talking to your family and I need you to stop talking to your friends. For my Jamaican people in particular, when it comes to immigration law, we are not necessary because them know everything, right? No, they do not. What worked for you in 2005, in 2015, is not what's going to work for you in 2025. You need to speak with licensed professionals who can properly advise you on the changes in policy. The beauty and the curse that is immigration law is it's constantly changing. So what immigration law, the landscape of today is not the landscape of 6 months ago. So yes, you may have gotten approved 6 months ago, but I promise you things have changed since then. So please make sure you are not speaking with your family. I've been fighting with my clients about this since Donald Trump won the office again. Oh, my family is saying this. I'm like,
but Tremaine,
not requiring me to help you.
let me ask you though, Tremaine, if you can't talk to your family, where is your support system to kind of get through this lonely, isolated period of your life? Where should you be
Right.
leaning?
If we're talking about providing emotional support, then yes, we talk to our family. But if you're trying to figure out how to strategize, how to move forward, then you need to speak with attorneys. You need to speak, and yes, everyone's now going to say, oh, but you have to pay for consultations. At my office, if you call here and tell us that you cannot afford an attorney, we refer you to low cost services that may be able to assist you. For instance, Legal Aid, Catholic Charities, those are great organizations that have licensed attorneys on staff who may be able to assist you. There's lots of attorneys who do free consultations. I myself, I try to go live at least once a week on my TikTok page just to answer questions for people who may have questions who may not be able to afford an attorney. So there's a lot of us who are out here trying to help. And whenever I do find time to go scroll on the social media pages, there's so many of us, especially now. I'm proud to say there's so many Caribbean attorneys now who are following my lead and doing the little lives so they can answer the questions for you guys. So the resources are there. Saying, oh, I can't afford an attorney when you have a new iPhone. Okay, we need to fix our priorities now. That's all. We just have to change our priorities.
There is a process, or what we call as lawyers due process, with regards to potential deportation from the impact of President Trump's policy of mass deportation. Talk to us a little bit about the due process rights individuals have if they're undocumented, right? Whether they have a criminal past or not.
Right.
What are some of the things that they should be doing to plan, prepare, in the event, what if you are from a mixed status family where you are undocumented, but the other family members are documented? Should you be making sure that the kids who are documented, have contact number just in case you get picked up by ICE? Should you have certain documentation ready in terms of how long you've been here? Talk to us a little bit about the things that you can do from a due process standpoint that will help you to plan and prepare to be fearless.
Okay. First things first, if you have a case before USCIS, or had one that has been denied or is currently in process, you need to update your address. Okay. The biggest issue and the easiest way for ICE to be able to remove you from the US is to grant you what is called an in absentia order. And what that is let's say, for instance, you file a case before USCIS and you provided one address and that case got denied. Now they want to place you in immigration court proceedings because, like we're saying, there's due process rights and you're allowed to go before a judge to plead your case, right? If they do not have the proper address, your notice to appear, which is the charging document for immigration court, that's the first thing they give you to tell you that, hey, you're in court now, you have to show up at this time before this judge because of this reason. If they do not have the proper address, when they send that notice to appear, you will not receive it. But court is going to proceed and they're going to go ahead and call your name before the judge on the day your hearing comes. And if you are not there, now you have a removal order. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing. If you always have to make sure that they have your proper address. I know that's scary, but it's for a reason. If things don't go well, you want to make sure that you have your day in court. So that's the first thing. Do I suggest that you always have your documents handy? Absolutely. Not carry them with you everywhere, right? Because there's a lot of fear surrounding that as well. Oh, they're saying that they're going to be stopping people and checking their credentials or what have you. You don't have to walk around with your naturalization certificate. Okay. But you want to still keep things in a safe place, but make sure that they are accessible if you do get stopped or if you do end up, being detained. Let's say if you're not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident.
Right.
Yes.
And certainly, we want folks to avoid any digital scams. If anybody calls you or sends you a WhatsApp and say that they can offer you some immigration benefit,
not do it. Do not do it. To that end, I'm very popular on social media and there are fake pages that pop up all the time. You find me through Google. I am on Google, put my name there and it takes you directly to my website. It's the first thing on there, right? So make sure that you are looking in the right places. A licensed attorney should not be engaging you on WhatsApp or Telegram, right? They'll usually have reputable websites and stuff for you to be able to do your research.
Some of the things that are swirling out there in the WhatsApp universe as well, Tremaine, is that the policy in the incoming presidency will take away documented benefits. You have a permanent residency, you're a naturalized U.S. citizen.
I'm glad you brought that up because
can we lose those benefits?
You always could. Right. So the denaturalization process has always been something that's it's enshrined in law. If you got your benefit through fraud, or let's say you got your benefit before you were supposed to, right, and you did not properly adjust your status, then yes, they can denaturalize you. So that's always been a policy. They just have not really focused on it too much unless it's blatant. You know what I mean? But yeah, he's perfectly within his rights to do that because it's the law.
Yeah. But if you are a permanent resident, I must tell you, those who are listening, please, I'm going to come close to the camera. If you are a permanent resident for at least 5 years in the United States, what are you waiting on to apply for your what, Tremaine?
Yes, your citizenship. I've been begging people since all of this year, because before the election is always the best time to file for your naturalization. But no, if you are eligible for citizenship, you need to file it. You know what I mean? The denaturalization process is a lengthy process because that's taking away a constitutional right from someone. And so you have a due process right to retain your citizenship, and they have to prove that you did not properly become a naturalized citizen. You know what I mean? So get your citizenship. Being a permanent resident does not protect you from deportation. They have to put you back in removal proceedings to prove that you didn't, get residency properly, or that they're within their rights to take it back, let's say because of your criminal record or something. But yeah, it's possible.
U.S. citizen, naturalized, permanent resident, document secured. Do not worry. Keep it moving and start thinking about a family plan for the rest of the family with the benefits that you already have.
With the caveat that if you got it through fraud, you may be in trouble. Yes.
So Dolly, yes, they can deport someone who has a green card if they commit a deportable offense. Tremaine, what are some of those deportable offenses that would trigger someone being deported with a green card?
Right. So we usually categorize those in two big categories. There's crimes involving moral turpitude, right? That's something that may not be a serious crime, but something that would shock the senses of the public, right? That's how they call it. And so there's those types of crimes. And then there's things that we call aggravated felonies, right? That is your armed robbery, that's your murder, that's your drug trafficking. Those types of things are usually permanent bars, can be permanent bars to getting any status, and that can also get your residency revoked from you.
Yeah. So, Tremaine, we've talked about border security. We're not going to go. I think everybody knows what that is all about
Yes.
in terms of closing down the south border and the north border. Tom Homan, he's going to have at it. Whether they're going to build a wall, who's going to pay for it, we're not going to debate that tonight, right? We've talked a little bit about mass deportations and the process of deportation, how that may happen in terms of undocumented persons. Right. President Trump has a policy. He wants to do that on day one. That's probably going to be a rolling process of who that is. Now, limiting immigration, Tremaine. Yes. Some of us may be here from Jamaica or other Caribbean countries on temporary protected status or on a humanitarian basis or on parole. Could you explain some of these humanitarian emergency crises where persons are here in the country and the United States has afforded them the opportunity to stay here and work because of what's happening in their home country? Explain that for folks.
Well, first of all, I want to point out that Jamaicans aren't eligible for temporary protective status, right? We have not been one of the countries that are designated for that. It's mostly Central American countries, South American countries, and certain countries in Africa, as well as some European countries like Ukraine that would get those benefits, right? So we are not eligible for that. However, I feel like Jamaicans are also affected by the deferred action for childhood arrivals and parole in place programs. Those are definitely going to be affected. And most of all, the asylum process is going to be affected.
Let's talk a little bit about the deferred action childhood arrivals, also known as DACA, right? So this is a policy that came out of the Oval Office. It's an executive order, meaning that the president at the time, President Obama, said that children who are here while their parents are undocumented could remain in the United States. Is this something that the Oval Office can do away with, Tremaine?
They have been trying to do away with this for quite some time. Trump gave a very the good old college try to get rid of it the last time he was in office. I definitely think that with him having control of so many branches of the government, that it's definitely a possibility that DACA is going to go away for real this time. I think so.
What about other persons that may be in political situation or an abusive relationship? What are the options for those persons?
Right. So right now, thankfully, President Biden rolled back a lot of the bars to asylum for a lot of the groups that we consider to fall into the what we call the catch-all of asylum law, which is those who are members of a particular social group. Right. And one of those social groups are people who are survivors of domestic violence in their countries, where the country does not protect, those individuals. Unfortunately, during the last administration, I found that surprising, but I shouldn't have, that was one of the asylum routes that they did away with. You know what I mean? So I fully expect them to attack that again. I think the access to LGBTQIA people of those communities are going to find it to be an upward battle for them to get those protections, right? That is already enshrined in law. It's going to take a lot for them to overturn all of that. But I think the access to it is going to be restricted a lot.
Right. So we talked about border security. We talked about somewhat the mass deportation policy. And we're now talking about the limiting immigration. You remember now, the U.S. government has the right to limit the number of people that can enter the country temporarily or to be here permanently for different immigration benefits. And this is all based on the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Yes.
When we spoke about the executive orders of temporary protected status, deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, or parole for other humanitarian reasons, meaning that there is a war happening in Sudan, or there's a hurricane that happened or earthquake that happened in Haiti. Those are executive orders that are then carried out by the executive agencies, right? So they give you earthquake happened in Haiti, they give you temporary protected status for the next 2020 to 26. So when we say it can go away, the new administration can do away with those.
Yes, they don't have to redesignate the countries once that time frame ends. Yeah,
Right. And there are thousands of people that are under these
thousands
programs
of
from
people.
these different
Yeah,
countries, from
yeah.
Africa, Asia, and Central America as well. So that's what we mean when we said it doesn't go away. No, we've been talking about undocumented persons, Tremaine. And let me switch a little bit about more into my wheelhouse, where I deal a lot with employers who are
Right.
hiring persons
Yes.
to come here to the United States temporarily, whether it's a H-1B visa as a professional or as an artist or as a performer or a religious worker.
Yeah.
Where they're being sent here to open the branch of a company.
Mm-hmm.
Do you anticipate that there will be any changes in policy for the new administration in terms of how they allow the number of persons under these programs for non-immigrant visas for employees?
Right. So employment-based immigration is affected as well, but I think on a lesser scale than the humanitarian bases and the
Right.
family bases,
Right.
because
Money
we're
talks.
making money from it. You know what I
Money
mean?
talks.
Yeah. But President Trump, based on his history, is going to want to do this America First agenda again, right? So I think access to H-1Bs, there's going to be less of them available to people. I do think that's going to come back.
Well, if he wants to bolster the economy, you can't just summarily remove 11 million people from the workforce.
Right.
I don't think it's not going to impact the economy.
He never thinks about that stuff.
Construction, agriculture,
Right.
I mean,
he never thinks about that stuff. They're not thinking about how this mass deportation trope is going to directly affect the country. And I want us to remember what happened in Florida last year, right? When DeSantis decided he was going to implement his law, people left the state in droves.
Yeah.
That directly affected construction. I have direct view outside my window. I have my office is in downtown Fort Lauderdale. There was a lot of construction happening. When I tell you everything stopped for like 10 months, I'm not exaggerating, because that's where our construction workforce, our fruit and produce. Florida has never recovered. You cannot go into Publix and find a good green pepper anymore, right? And so the cost of food, everything is always directly affected. So I do think that the workforce is going to be affected. I do think that access to employment-based visas are going to be affected. They're also going to be stricter on who they allow to receive these benefits.
Yeah, because employers also have to be held accountable for hiring persons that have the work authorization. So it's going to be interesting to see, as a person with business background, whether or not they're going to hold not only undocumented persons accountable, but also employers accountable as well.
And we also have to talk about these raids that he's planning.
Well, we'll see whether or not some of these places of employment are going to be targets for ICE and for the CBP, the Customs Border Protection Agency, in terms of the employment of this policy. So Tremaine, we've talked about a little bit of some of the information that you should be keeping handy with you in terms of your paperwork and your updated address. We've talked about you ensuring that you're speaking with licensed professional. One of the things that we haven't spoken about is that desperate people sometimes do desperate things, Tremaine, right? And I really want this point to be punctuated, that you should not submit any documentation or enter into any relationship or arrangement with anyone that are under fraudulent purposes for immigration purposes. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of this.
Now, that's one of my main practice areas is family-based immigration. And so I'm very versed at picking up when these things are happening. And I am very strict on my clients in terms of providing proper evidence to prove the marriage is bona fide. And the reason I am that way is because they are the consequences for marriage fraud are very harsh.
Yeah.
If you are found to have defrauded the U.S. government by entering into a marriage for the sole purpose of getting immigration benefit, you are permanently barred from ever getting an immigration benefit again. They do not care if you have a U.S. citizen child who is Mother Teresa. They don't care. You are not eligible for any future immigration benefit. Why do I say that? It is not worth it. Desperate times, yes, but we are living in modern times, and I think the hardest thing that I've had to deal with, especially with the Caribbean community, is this. Everybody has to say, well, how will they know? This is the federal government. They know when you went to Publix yesterday. There's CCTV everywhere.
Yeah.
When I was in law school, I interned with ICE, and it is not difficult at all to catch people. Nothing is private.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I once caught someone in a lie just from toll receipts. They have access to all that information. And so, and you have to realize now, because a lot of people are like, yeah, well, you know, I already dealt with it. So now I'm going to my citizenship. The reason why I always tell people that citizenship applications are the most complicated is because they go back over your entire immigration record before they grant you that naturalization.
Right. So just don't do it.
Your visa application. You know what I mean? So don't play with these people, please. Let's not do that. Okay.
Fill out the applications and the petitions truthfully. When you sign it, it is a legal document.
Yes.
Right? So please don't do that. I just want to take a quick 5-minute breath.
Before you do that, Marlon, on that point, I want to bring up something that's very popular that a lot of people are afraid of. If you are married to a U.S. citizen and you ended up working without authorization in the country, 9 times out of 10, that's a waived issue. Do not lie on the form. You have no reason to lie on the form.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a matter of disclosure.
Yes.
If you don't disclose it, they will use it as something that you are trying to. Please don't do it. Yeah. So you are listening to Jamaicans.com. We're live on LinkedIn.com. We're also live on YouTube and Facebook. We want to thank you for joining us this pre-Thanksgiving conversation. We know you're going to be talking about it around the turkey anyway, with regards to the incoming presidency of President Donald J. Trump, his second term. He will be inaugurated on January 20th, which is right after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I just want to put that there in the inbox. But we wanted you to pay attention to this incoming transition because it's going to impact your life as a Jamaican, as a Caribbean person, as a if you know other persons who are from immigrant families. So we just want you to kind of pay attention. Some of the key websites, that public information, everybody.
Yes.
Department of Homeland Security, dhs.gov. Pay attention to the bulletins that come out, the announcements that come out at that website. The Department of Homeland Security is part of the cabinet. Governor Kristi Noem from South Dakota, she is the secretary-elect for the Department of Homeland Security. We don't know who yet will be the director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Agency.
I think right now with this border policy and all of that, if you are in immigration court, there is not enough conversation around the EOIR website. If you want to see where you are in immigration court, or if you've been placed in immigration court, I need you to Google EOIR case information.
What's EOIR acronym? What does that mean?
Executive Office for Immigration Review. That's the executive, that's the office that handles immigration court hearings.
Right.
So you're going to type in EOIR case information, and it's going to populate a portal where you can put in your alien number, and it's going to tell you whether you're in immigration court. It's going to tell you when your next hearing is, and if there's been any action on your case. It also tells you which court you're in, and it has the phone number there. So there's a lot of information out there for you. A lot of people get that in absentia order I was talking about earlier, where they remove you without you being in court because they just didn't know the information. So if you had a case denied with USCIS, or if you're in court, you need to be checking that website.
Another agency within the Department of Homeland Security that we want you to pay very close attention to is ICE, right? Immigration Customs Enforcement, right? If a family member or a friend or somebody gets picked up, you need to go to the ICE website and you can locate them where they're located.
That's going to become important too. Like, we were on the ICE detainee locator all day, every day. So just know that you're going to also need to be calling around, because that's something that I did find that they were doing that was very disgusting. They were literally moving people without telling their families and not recording it. So
and then on that point, Tremaine, we want our viewers here on Jamaicans.com, like I said, we don't want you to be fearful. We want you to be fearless, right? We want you to plan, prepare, and to be informed, and to know where to get the information, to arm yourself, to understand what your due process rights are. Before we close this program this evening, though, we want to definitely offer you an opportunity if you want to drop a question in the comments from any of our platforms. We are happy to kind of take any quick questions. But one of the things, Tremaine, while we survey the DMs, as they would say, for the platforms, that you should know who your Congress representative is.
Yes.
You should know who your senator is, because they are going to be sitting on various committees evaluating some of these nominees and also evaluating any proposals for new laws, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, your local representatives become very instrumental for assisting you in situations where USCIS is being unfair to you, or ICE. You can actually use your senator for assistance with that, to wag their finger and be like, hey, make a decision on this case, or please make sure you're following proper policy. So definitely good resources. Yes.
So you need to have them on speed dial, even though this does not have to do with our topic this evening. Kaya is asking, she's an F1 visa status. She has a priority date of April 2023, which is almost a year and a half away. How long is visas like that? Where can you go and check the processing time for a particular visa, Jamaica? How can you provide a resource? Where can folks go?
The Department of State's website, right? If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, I do not estimate. I do not speculate. I give you real and actual factual information. So you'd have to check for yourself at the Department of State's website.
And when they go to the Department of State websites, what link are they looking for?
Right. So depending on the visa type that you have, you can select the visa type that you have, and it will tell you what priority dates they're working on. The visa bulletins also super important for people who are in family-based and employment-based categories. Sorry, Kai, I'm going to divert to something else really quickly, because the priority dates are also there. But when it comes to non-immigrant visas, you have to go to the Department of State's website.
Right. Okay. So listen, we've covered a lot of ground. A lot of this is still somewhat projecting and predicting what may happen until the actual policy, until the pen from the Oval Office goes on the executive order, or until the House and the Congress passes the law that the president then signs or vetoes. We don't know exactly how those things are going to happen, or until someone files a case that they think is not being appropriately enforced, and then it ends up in the court system to be evaluated. So do you still believe, Tremaine, in the three branches of government and the power of the U.S. Constitution?
I will say yes. I'm still a young lawyer, so I'm not that jaded as yet. I think there's still good to be done, and I think that is what people like Donald J. Trump do not recognize, is that there's power in the judicial branch, because all of it still has to be interpreted, and whoever the judges that it goes before, that is the person that has the last word, in my opinion. So yes.
Yeah, man. So let's summarize the takeaways for this evening here. We're talking a little bit about the impact of a President Donald J. Trump, elected in 2016. He lost the election in 2020 to President Joe Biden. President Joe Biden is on his way out, and President Donald Trump is now the president-elect, having defeated Vice President Harris on the election on November the 5th. So there's going to be an impact. New administration, new leadership, persons in the branches of the government. The executive office, you remember, he will nominate certain cabinet persons. For purposes of this conversation tonight, we are very interested in who the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security is going to be.
And the Attorney General.
And the Attorney General and the Secretary of Labor.
Yes.
And the Secretary of State. These persons are going to be involved in a number of issues that involve persons coming in and out of the United States, whether for national security reasons or for the American First agenda, which President Trump, by virtue when he is officially inaugurated, will have the power to do that.
Key takeaways. On January 20th, there's going to be policies implemented on the first day. So that's the day we're looking out for, and let's stay informed.
And his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who is also a Floridian, a very, very well-seasoned political administrator, is going to ensure that these executive orders are being prepared as we speak.
Yep.
And we just want you to know what those executive orders mean. How are they going to impact your lives? How are they going to impact your families? How are they going to impact your businesses that you may even be in one of those employers? that
Yes.
are that are watching this program. So we want to make sure that you consult licensed professionals. We want you to ensure what are some of the other takeaways that we want to ensure people their paperwork and their address.
Yes, make sure your address is updated with USCIS and also with the immigration court if you're already in court. Again, please make sure you are staying informed on your situation by checking your case statuses, whether that be in court or through USCIS. Please make sure you're getting information from reputable sources. Be very mindful of scams. There's a lot of people who are ready to take advantage of your situation. So please make sure you're doing your research on who it is you're seeking help from. Keep your information in a safe place. And yes, if you are undocumented and you have children who are documented, you need to make plans for them.
And one of some of the best things that you can do as a U.S. permanent resident, you may not be able to vote, but you still pay taxes and you still have a voice with your U.S. representative and your senator. If you are an eligible permanent resident, another big takeaway from this evening, please just find the $725. You Christmas present to yourself.
Yes,
Apply
file
for citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Apply for your citizenship, and make sure that you are leaning on organizations like the Americans for Immigrant Justice, a nonprofit that can provide you guidance, the Florida Immigrant Coalition, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. They have numbers of resources to help you be informed and to understand your due process rights. Before we go, Danoy has a last minute question here.
Danoy, to answer your question, no, do not refile. Those waivers are taking quite a long time. I know, years and years, but no, the answer is not to refile. It's being processed. It's just taking time. Okay, so you just have to wait, my dear.
They're backed up. They're backed up. They're backed up.
Yes.
Tremaine, it's been great talking with you here on Jamaica. I think this may be a series, right? Because we haven't talked about the impact on businesses like tariffs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we certainly just want you to plan, prepare. We want you to be more fearless than fearful with regards to this talk about
that.
You can't deport 11 million.
You cannot deport everybody, guys. Okay, people say what they have to say in election, and you will see that it's more difficult for him to implement that. All these things cost money. He has to get across the law. He has to come through us before he can get to you anyway.
And he has to move the money in the budget to do it.
Exactly.
And where is he gonna? Well, we won't talk about where he's gonna get it, but it's up to him and his team. Our job here. And even for some of our viewers who may have even supported the president as well, it's important for you to have a voice and to speak up in the best interest of the Jamaican community and the broader community that is extended family of Jamaicans worldwide. We want to thank you for tuning in. To Tremaine, where can we find you online? How can folks contact you before we close?
So the best way to contact me is through our website at www.hemanslaw.com. You can find us on Google as well. Our telephone number is 954-315-3840. Again, that's 954-315-3840. But for my millennials and Gen Zers, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok.
Wait. For your millennials and Gen Zers, we can find you where?
Okay, Jen, don't come get me. My apologies. Right? For those who prefer social media.
Okay, thank you.
You can find me at Legally Trim on Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook. We also have a page for the Hemans Law as well, but most people follow me on Legally Trim, especially because of my free lives that I do on TikTok weekly.
And for my Gen Alphas and my Gen Zers and my millennials, you can find me on LinkedIn at Marlon Hill. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Marlon Hill. You can also find me in the universe on my cell number, which is 305-244-4456. Whether or not you are viewing us from St. Anne or you're viewing us from Spanish Town, Jamaica, certainly you can reach out to us directly through Jamaicans.com as well. If you have any questions, before you make any plans to come to the United States, please make sure you have a plan.
Yes.
Please make sure you ask questions. Please make sure you understand the city that you're moving to. Have a plan before you leave Jamaica. Please, I'm begging you to do that, because your life will be so much easier and so much more prosperous when you have a plan to do that. And if you right now are listening to us and you are undocumented and you are having this trepidation, you're having stress, you may be even depressed or isolated, and you feel lonely, we want you to take a breath and to listen to some of the advice that we have given you tonight. As this policy employs itself, there is information available to you, there are resources available to you, and there's a due process that's available to you to make sure that you can get to the next chapter of your life. Thank you for tuning in here with us on Jamaicans.com. Until our next segment, keep subscribing to us on Jamaicans.com on all the platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. What else they're creating now, Tremaine? Where else do you want to find us?
What's it called? Blue Fly? Blue Sky? I'm not on that one yet.
Thank you for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Be
Happy
safe and be
Thanksgiving.
blessed.